All right, joining us on set, partially, some remote, David Malpass, former president of the World Bank. There he is. We have John Carney here, Breitbart Finance and Economics editor and co-author of the daily Breitbart Business Digest. And special guest, very special guest, Arkansas Congressman French Hill, who is the chair of the House Banking Committee. No, whatever it is, Financial Services Committee. But it's a very big deal. French Hill, am I wrong in questioning this? Am I wrong in thinking that maybe the reciprocity idea is going down the drain? And, you know, when you look at steel and aluminum and copper and chips and lumber, all of a sudden it doesn't seem like reciprocal. It just seems like bang, 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 and I don't know what's happening next.
Well, I think you're right. I think your outline was really good. I really support trade diplomacy. I think it's very, very important. We saw that back when you and I worked in both the Reagan and the Bush administration. We used trade diplomacy extensively by doing investigations of chip dumping by the Japanese or auto parts from the Japanese. So it works, and we can remove tariff and non-tariff barriers. But one of the strengths President Trump has coming into office is the issue of reciprocity, particularly among the developed world. And you're right, before he was even sworn in, the European Union was thinking about cutting their auto tariff to our level or below. And so I think that's the leverage that we have, reciprocity. I think it improves trade relations. I think it opens up markets for American business.
You know, John Carney, just like, I guess if I were the Beatles, I would say give reciprocity a chance. Okay? That's how I would put it. And it kind of seems like this closes the door on it. This car thing, 25%, you got 25% of these other things, steel and lumber and chips and copper and so forth. And I'm concerned about that. Among other reasons I'm concerned is I thought reciprocity was easily understood, common sense wise. You know, it's like, you hit me, I'm going to hit you. You tax me, I'm going to tax you back. You tax me less, then I will tariff you less. I think the general public can understand that. This, on the other hand, you know, seems like game, set, match, bam, 25%. And I don't know, I have a sense this one might scare people, but what do you think?
So I think that you hit on something in your introduction that was really important. We actually produce very little parts of any cars in the United States. It actually comes down to just 25% of cars are really made in the United States. 50% are straight out imports.
25% of all cars
of all
in
cars
the world.
That purchased in the U.S. 25%, because we import around 50% of cars just in as a whole, and then 50% of the cars, the numbers you just showed, 50% of the cars that we supposedly make here really come from abroad. This is actually why they're doing this, partly under national security, because they are worried that if we really are that dependent on importing all of these cars, what happens if a war breaks out? What happens if we can't rely on those imports anymore? I think that is why Trump has turned around so quickly from reciprocity. And I think that's why it's linked to lumber, why it's linked to copper, why it's linked to steel and aluminum, because these aren't necessarily just trade tariffs. These I would think of as national security tariffs.
David Malpass, are you surprised at the 25% car tariff? Is there a risk that it'll break up USMCA? And in general, what you make of it?
Hi, Larry. There's a huge risk to MCA, USMCA, the Mexico-Canada deal. But that's okay. The world's got to move forward. There's a giant trade problem. It's a national security problem. So the one thing I'd add, and I think Chairman Hill said it very well, but it's going to take time to get us back into the business of producing the parts that are needed within automobiles, within defense equipment. We need to have training programs in the U.S. education system where kids actually learn to do math and reading, and so that's going to take some time. So the one thing that's surprising me is the suddenness of it, because companies are really good at adjusting, but they need a few days to do it. And same with the diplomacy on a global basis. There's got to be discussion and with countries as the U.S. adjusts the world trading system to one that puts America first.
See, French, there's a couple important points here, which you all have mentioned. I liked reciprocity because there was a negotiation to it. And Trump is a master negotiator, so I felt quite confident. But suddenly there's no negotiation. Now, that might change, and he might come back, but at the moment. The other thing is, in terms of changing it, John Carney talks about national security, which is an important element in some of this or all of this. It's going to take a while to change all this, okay? And particularly in the North American, what I thought was the North American free trade zone. Boy, there was blood, sweat, and tears when Mr. Lighthizer negotiated that. I was on his team. He's a brilliant guy. I hate to see it all fall down before we get the full benefits of it.
Yeah, I mean, my view is on both points, on the national security point, but also specifically on autos, steel, aluminum, things that are important to the president, important to the manufacturing base of this nation for both autos, but also national security. It takes time to see those results. So they're not politically connected. If you want to change content, American content in that North American USMCA, we ought to use the USMCA to achieve that, which is what President did in his first term with Ambassador Lighthizer with your policy direction. We increased the percentage of American-made content in the definition of North America. So that's point one. We should do that, and he should lead it, and he can, I think, achieve that. Secondly, Mexico and Canada have the ability to limit that non-North American content coming into their own countries, completely compliant, in my view, with WTO and the agreement. They could limit Chinese components, for example, coming into Mexico before they would go into a finished product.
Larry, I think actually that we are going to see, we saw at the beginning they're saying we're going to allow the U.S.-Mexico compliant, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement compliant stuff to come in at first without tariffs. I think we will see those countries say, look, we will do a better job of policing our own manufacturing to make sure that it really is made in North America, not coming from China, not coming from anywhere else, that it's made in North America. And I think we'll see eventually that stuff will be exempt from the 25% tariff if it really does comply with the USMCA.
Okay, I think that was very ambiguous. I read the fact sheet. It just sounded like they were doing some value-added calculations, and I'm not sure what that means. Maybe you're right, John. I hope you're right. I just think it's very interesting. So the number one domestic content maker for cars in this country is Tesla. Okay, and actually they've gone up from 77% 10 years ago to 81%. The number two is, wait for it, Honda. I love that. And they've gone from 50 to 63%. By the way, I was privy to some of the negotiations from the late, great Shinzo Abe and President Trump, who forced that. Now, the American cars are going in the wrong direction. Ford has gone from 65 to 54 domestic content. GM has gone from 66 to 54. I think GM stock got hit the hardest on that today, but Ford was probably a close second. The rest of it's a day in the country. Hyundai, Kia, 17%. Nissan, 24%. Toyota 29, VW better. I want to give them credit. VW has gone. Hold on, stop the presses. They've gone from 8.2% 10 years ago to 35% domestic content here in the U.S. So we'll give VW at least 2 cheers, if not quite 3 cheers.
I think it's a scandal that we spent so much money and broke the law, frankly, to bail out the auto companies not that long ago.
Right.
And they have
they're going wrong way.
They've come towards us and said, you know what, we're going to decrease the U.S. content. That's an abuse of the social contract that they had with the American people when we rescued them from destruction not even 10 years ago. I guess 10 years ago.
David Malpass, by the by, the stock market did not crash today. So that's something. I mean, I don't know that this is an earth-shattering, earth-ending event. A couple of stocks got shaken up, as I said. Last time I looked, GM was the worst of it, and Tesla was the best of it. But it wasn't the usual, what do they call it, tariff tantrum on Wall Street. What do you think about that, David?
The markets price in, and you know this better than all of us, the details of what's happening, and they do it company by company. So from an earnings standpoint, the market is saying this is not a disaster. Can I make other points? One is regulatory reforms in the U.S. are going to be critical to enabling all of this to happen, and also the energy production in the U.S. So I think it's really important, and the market will watch how quickly you move on the positive side as you change the supply chain. And then what we haven't talked about enough, China, the problem of China, they use an aggressive industrial policy that's particularly apparent on electric vehicles, where they, are trying to steal the whole market. And then they've changed their strategy, and they're doing foreign direct investment into Mexico, which was not envisioned in the USMCA when it was negotiated in 2018.
No, good
so
point.
I think we've got lots of areas to work on as President Trump moves really fast to fix some of the problems.
I mean, look, I must say, French Hill, Chairman Hill, I really agree with Trump about making this more of a manufacturing economy. I mean, I totally agree with that. It may take 10 years to do it. I think the guy's on the right track. I'm not afraid of the tariff weapon. I have full confidence in him as a tariff negotiator and so forth. But I do worry that the trade policy is a little unpredictable right now. I mean, I don't know if reciprocity is dead. That was the title of my riff. I'm asking that question. This doesn't strike me as particularly reciprocal. And I just kind of, look, I was in favor of the universal ring around the collar. I was, because it was kind of like a value-added tax, and it would have raised a whole lot of money that I could use to cut everybody's taxes and get Steve Forbes' flat tax at 15%. I was in favor of all that. But this one seems like in and out, up and down. I'm just not sure what. I don't have no idea. Give me what do you think is going to happen on Wednesday? What's he going to tell us?
Well, I hope that he gives clarity on the strategy. Because all the points that we've made tonight, the trade policy is right. You can use it for a sanction threat. You can use it to open up new markets. You can use it to compel behavior like in India to have a much more reciprocity-oriented trade policy with the United States. You can use it as a way to compel more domestic manufacturing. But all three, and they're complementary, but they're not the same weapon.
Right.
They have to be used selectively. And like in steel and aluminum, pick within steel and aluminum what you think is the most competitive place and where we should shore up production and target that rather than an across-the-board basis. And I think we'll begin to see that clarity. But to your point about uncertainty, I'm not concerned about that in the markets, but I am concerned about it in planning to complement our deregulatory work, our tax work that we have ahead of us, because that'll produce the growth economy of the next few years.
So that's just my last hook. He always reads my mind. This is like a 30-year long playing record. You look at the tax cuts, both 1.0 and 2.0, I'm going to call it $5 trillion worth. It could be more than that. You look at the deregulation, I'm going to call it up to $2 trillion to roll back Biden. So let's say there's $7 trillion of supply-side incentives to cut taxes and deregulate. That vastly is larger than the tariff story, which people seem to continue to obsess about. So I think people should keep their powder dry on this. Let's see what Mr. Trump has in mind for us next week.
Well, one of the things that will be absolutely important if we are going to make this reshoring of American auto parts happen is the tax cuts.
Right.
That 15% tax cut on both capital equipment and factories, as we've talked about many times.
Retroactive.
We need that if we're going to be able to rebuild our industrial capacity.
Yell at him. He's right next to you. Give him hell. Give him hell. Give him hell. Get it done fast. That's right.
Well, we are moving fast, and we need to move fast, which is why Mike Johnson and John Thune need to get our budget reconciliation plan to both the Senate floor ASAP.
Actually, the mood music coming out of those talks is much improved. Yeah, no, I like it. Even I like it. All right. French, Larry, I got to jump, David Malpass. I love you, buddy. You come to New York, and you might get to stay longer. It's appreciate having you here. Chairman of the Financial Services Committee, French Hill. It's fabulous to have you on set. John Carney, you're wonderful on late notice. We appreciate that, too.